Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the welcome. And of course, my name is Seo Wycliffe, and I'm currently the managing partner for A&B Forensics East Africa. And maybe probably to bring you up to speed about A&B Forensics. Of course, we are Africa's leading blockchain intelligence service provider. And right now, we have got at least 3 countries where we are offering our services, and that is Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria. And maybe just to touch on some of the services which we normally offer in-house. Of course, we do conduct prospective crypto customer pre-onboarding audits. We also offer compliance as a service for virtual asset service providers and Web3 startups. On top of that, we also do offer litigation support on virtual asset. We support the law enforcement through training and offering comprehensive digital and forensic services. We also do offer smart contracts vulnerability testing and cybersecurity services. With that being said and done, we also do equip practitioners with comprehensive courses ranging from certified cryptocurrency compliance specialist, certified cryptocurrency investigator course called CCI, blockchain and cryptocurrency for accountants, and blockchain and cryptocurrency for businesses. So this is just among some of the services which we are currently offering. And just trying to move to the next slide. This only shows for those people probably whom I'm interacting with for the first time. Already I just mentioned about my name. My background is in criminology and security studies, and happen to have served as the head of crypto investigation in Crime Shield. And as I mentioned to you guys, right now I'm a blockchain forensic specialist, currently working with A&B Forensics. Of course, with that being said and done, I'm also currently pursuing my certified fraud examiner CFE professional course with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. So, disclaimer for our presentation for today. Basically, to let you know that the information in this presentation does not constitute task, investment, or financial advice. It is just an introduction to give you more basic knowledge about blockchain technology and virtual asset and their nexus with criminal activities. Probably, I don't know with those people who are joining, maybe just to ask, do we have cybersecurity professionals in the house, or do we have a specialist in the blockchain ecosystem in the house? If you are falling in those categories which I've mentioned, probably you can just let me know by tapping in the chat with some 111s. You can just let me know by tapping in the chat with some 111s if you're falling under the categories which I've mentioned. And probably for those people who are listening about blockchain for the first time and cryptocurrency presentation for the first time, probably I would rather categorize you as a newbie. You can also let me know by typing in the chat with some zeros so that we know the kind of people whom we have in-house. So I'll try as much as I can to be more moderate in terms of not touching on the too technicality of the things which we do. I'll try as much as I can to harmonize my presentation so that at least with those people who are basically new, no need to fear much. At least I'll try so that you can be able to get to understand what we are going to talk about today. But with that being said and done, I'm just sharing the goal of our today's presentation. And today's presentation is basically to provide fundamental understanding of what blockchain is and cryptocurrency, and also to introduction of the basic concept of blockchain tracing, what, where, and how. And also, I'll try as much as I can to introduce some tools, all right? Some free tools available, which probably, especially for the law enforcement who are joining, you can also take advantage of those. And also to understand the nexus between crypto and ransomware, and also share some practical tips and advice when it comes to tracing crypto ransomware. So in case of any questions, ladies and gentlemen, you can just be typing them in our chat box. So probably once I've gone through, of course, I know we'll be having the session for the Q&A. So don't feel ashamed when you're typing your question. Of course, with my moderators whom we have in the house, will be helping me to note them down even as time goes by. So with agendas, as we all know, of course, we'll touch on what is blockchain, how electronic and crypto transactions takes place, We'll touch a little bit of on transactions, how to look up on blockchain data, wallets, security concern and risk related to crypto assets, ransomware and virtual assets, objectives of crypto tracing, and some of the real case tracking around ransomware from infection, negotiation, and payment, and then role of blockchain analytics, and also we will navigate some of the public blockchain explorers that we have, and also touch on the state of ransomware attacks in Kenya as well. And then with that, we'll just round it up with the Q&A session. So with that being said and done, I know for new people who are probably listening blockchain for the first time, of course, this is one of the emerging technology which has been creating waves all over the world. And I know people have been asking themselves, what is this blockchain, all right? So ideally, without mentioning too much details in terms of technicality, a blockchain simply refers to the new way of storing information or data, all right? And before I dissect blockchain a little bit, maybe to let you guys know how information are usually stored formally, then before the introduction of blockchain, how was then information used to be stored? So when you look back, or when you compare how information are currently being stored with some of the institutions which we have around, these institutions are basically utilizing what is called the centralized ledger. And with the centralized ledger basically means there is a central place where this information can actually be easily accessed. All right. For example, I can give an example with the banks. Right now, if you visit different branches of a particular bank, then with the banks, they normally have what is called their headquarters, all right? With their headquarters. It basically means with their headquarters, it means it's the headquarters which controls most of the operations. And from the headquarters, they can be able to feed in these subsidiary branches. So ideally, what it means, in case of an attack, all right, and we have been seeing cases of thefts and attacks within institutions, when the central headquarters has been attacked, then it means it will take time for these other subsidiary branches to be in operation, given that most information or most data will have been corrupted, given that we are basically working with a centralized kind of operation. All right. So in simple terms, you're basically saying with the centralized system, they basically have what is called the central point of failure. All right. But now when you come to the distributed ledger, all right, where we have the blockchain technology, we are basically saying blockchain is just a type of a distributed ledger. And how does a ledger operate, or how does a distributed ledger operate? Maybe just to bring you up to speed, a ledger is basically a way of recording information or data. And distributed basically means it's spread out, all right? And technology, of course, it's something which is self-explanatory. I wouldn't have to mention a lot of things when it comes to technology. So in blockchain, each copy is referred to as a node, all right? So for example, in the diagram which I have, you can be able to see that in the distributed ledger area, each copy of transaction is basically stored in different nodes. So with a distributed ledger kind of operation, it means there is no any central point of failure. So it means even if one node gets attacked, then it means we still have thousands and thousands of nodes where we can be able to access information and data without operation being jeopardized. All right. So with that being said and done, that basically leads us to the benefits of a distributed ledger technology. And as I've mentioned, is the reason why most of the institutions or most of companies are basically shifting gears to distributed ledger technology is because it has got what is called a consistency perspective. All right, consistency basically means when there's an attack which has happened in one of the nodes, then operations cannot be disrupted because more information or more data are still stored in different nodes. And then we have got a security perspective. All right, with a security perspective, it basically means there is no one central point of failure which somebody can just be able to attack and probably kill the system. So as I've mentioned, we have got thousands and thousands, all right, of different nodes which are spread across the globe, and one can be able to access and view information. And that is why when it comes to us as security experts, when we're doing blockchain forensics, all right, we have got thousands and thousands and thousands of nodes where we can be able to query and get the blockchain information, which we're basically looking into, right? So what are some of the information which are stored in blockchain? All right. So maybe just to bring you guys to speed is that information stored in each block is usually cryptographically linked. All right. Then once each block has received maybe, let's say, X amount of information, then we are moving to the creation of another block. So these blocks are usually linked in a chain format. And that's what leads to what is called a blockchain. All right. So with the information which is basically contained in a blockchain, this is a particular format how information are usually stored. So we have got what is called the Bitcoin block or the block header. Then we have got the part for transactions. So at the block header, we have got what is called the hash for the previous block, the metadata, the nouns, all the routing system, all that kind of stuff. Then we have got the transactions bit or the information bit. So one thing that I need also to let you guys know is that the bulk of the block is always reserved for storing transactional information. Remember when I was defining blockchain, a distributed ledger, and when we talked about the distributed ledger, we talked about ways of storing information. And that's why when you look at a particular block, 90% of the space within that particular block has only been designated for storing information, right? So with that being said and done, before we touch on how crypto transactions work, allow me to first of all touch on how electronic transfers usually take place so that you'll be able to appreciate why most organizations, most companies are now looking forward to adapting towards distributed ledger technology. So, for example, with an electronic transfer, let's say Sewe wants to send money to Michael, right? So it means I will have to initiate a transaction with my bank, all right? Then once I've initiated that transaction, it will alert my bank that Sewe wants to transfer X amount of money, let's say maybe to Michael, who is based in, let's say, a particular country. Let's work with an example with our neighboring countries here, Uganda, right? So Sewe wants to send X amount of shillings to Michael, who is based in Uganda. So once this notification has reached the bank, what the bank will do, they'll basically do some verification checks. And some of the checks which the bank usually does is to confirm whether Sewe literally has this X amount of money which he wants to transfer. Once the bank has confirmed that, then the bank will go ahead to do what are called the compliance checks. And the compliance checks, some of the checks is basically to determine who is this Sewe. All right, is he a police? So they'll do some of the background checks of the type of money which I want to wire. And then what normally happens, once they've okayed the transaction, this transaction is wired to an intermediary bank. All right. So with the works of the intermediary bank, basically their role is to convert. So they can be able to convert my KES, let's say, to a United States dollar. Then they will be able now to convert the United States dollar to Ugandan shillings. Remember, Michael is based in Uganda. All right. So what normally happens with the intermediary banks, once they have processed, they have converted, they will alert Michael's, which is the recipient's bank, and they'll alert that particular bank there's X amount of money which is being sent by Sewe, and it's coming to Michael. So with the recipient bank, of course, as well, we'll do the regular checks, and they'll confirm who is this Michael, whether what type of money which Michael is supposed to receive, all those needed checks within the bank. And something which is very much important, which you need to understand, is that once the transaction is complete and Michael has received the confirmation receipt, the bank will go ahead and do what is called record keeping. All right. So it means we cannot be able to dispute that a transaction basically happened if at all that particular transaction has been recorded. So record keeping is very much important, simply because with record keeping, therefore, we can be able to confirm that indeed a transaction happened. So with what normally happens with electronic transfer, then now let's come to crypto transfers. How basically do they work? Of course, it's more or less similar to how the electronic transfers work. It's only that the only difference are the parties involved. So banks, which are normally categorized as Web 2, they're the people who are responsible for validating transaction and storing the information. But when it comes to cryptocurrency, where we have got the Web3 institutions, it is the blockchain which validates information, records, and stores the transaction information. So in the Web3 space or in the crypto space, what happens? We now initiate the transaction. This transaction is basically broadcasted within the blockchain ecosystem. And within the blockchain ecosystem, there is validation which happens once within the blockchain, it has confirmed that I've got X number of cryptocurrency which I have to transfer. Once it has been validated, once it has been approved, that transaction will be added or combined with another data block, and then there is a new block or a new block which is going to be formed. And then once that particular new block has been formed, then I'll be able to have a confirmation that my transaction is complete. So the only key difference between Web 2 and Web 3 transactions is that with Web 2, we have got banks as the intermediaries. But when it comes to the Web 3 ecosystem, we have got the blockchain technology itself, right? Which validates the transaction, stores the information. If I'm clear up to that particular point, ladies and gentlemen, you can probably type in the chats with some one-on-ones if you can be able to hear me loud and clear. You can just type in the chat with some one-on-ones if you can be able to hear me loud and clear. Now, there is something that you need to understand, and especially for those probably who are into investigating crypto, or those people who are into checking what normally happens within the blockchain ecosystem and conducting transactions. There is a fact which you guys need to be you need to understand, is that with blockchains, they are not anonymous. They are pseudonymous. And the reason why I'm basically saying so is because there is a case in point. For those people who have ever read about the Silk Road, all right, the Silk Road, and maybe probably you can just note it down somewhere and you can read it sometimes later on. With the Silk Road, and the Silk Road is basically one of the cases which brought cryptocurrency into limelight. And Silk Road is one of the darknet marketplaces where criminals used to visit that particular site and be able to purchase illegal substances, illegal drugs using cryptocurrency. And when the law enforcement started investigating these particular cases in Silk Road, and the report reached one of the senators in the US, and he made, all right, he made one of the remarks, or one of the news when he was reporting. And this is something that among the things which he mentioned that there is a particular currency which has been noted, and this particular currency is being used virtually. And the reason why criminals are basically using it is because you cannot be able to trace it, and you cannot be able to tell the people who are transacting with it. And when he made that announcement in the live television network, the value for Bitcoin shot in the next 1 week. It rose from X amount of dollars to Y amount of dollars, all right? And the main reason the value of Bitcoin basically rose is because when criminals had that announcement, they were like, okay, this is the jackpot, all right? So many criminals went into Silk Road, started transacting with Bitcoin, knowing that the government cannot be able to reach out to them, or knowing that nobody can be able to unmask what they're doing, right? And that's why, especially with the government authorities, these high-end profile guys, any remarks that you're making as far as blockchain ecosystem is concerned, you need to be very careful, because so many people are watching, all right? So there is a remark which you can make, and it can catapult, or it can increase a particular activity, not to realize later on that indeed blockchain transactions are not anonymous, but they are pseudonymous. And of course, how we are going to see them as transactions go as we continue to move. Now, when we look at blockchain transactions, in my screen, this is a BTC transaction. BTC simply stands for Bitcoin, all right? And as I mentioned, this is just a screenshot showing how a Bitcoin transaction is being recorded on a public blockchain. And with public blockchain basically means it is transparent for the whole world, all right? It is transparent for the whole world. They can be able to see. And the reason why we have this, and especially for those people who maybe those who are joining as the law enforcement guys, cybersecurity expert, whenever transaction has happened, and whenever, let's say, you have reported a particular case to us, right? When we have accessed the blockchain, there are key information which you are basically looking at, all right? And those are the type of information which you are basically trying to obtain from a public blockchain or from blockchain transaction. We want to know the hash of a particular transaction. Hash basically means it's the reference or the receipt. It basically ties that, it's just a reference which ties a particular transaction. We want to know the timing when that particular transaction happened, the input, output value. We want to know the transaction fees. We want to know the type of cryptocurrency involved, all those stuff. And one thing which is very much important is below here. If you can be able to see my cursor, we want to see this particular cryptocurrency was moving from which place and it was heading to which destination. And that is some information which you can be able to retrieve from a public blockchain. Being able to see the transaction is moving from the person, the same way when we're doing the electronic transfer, and to who. But in this particular sense, it is being indicated in form of addresses. Of course, we will dive deep to be able to know and understand what addresses. So that one was for Bitcoin. This is for another type of cryptocurrency called Ethereum. There is one thing that you need to understand. We have got different types of cryptocurrency in the market, and how you are obtaining information, all right, from this public blockchain differs. They differ from the other. When you look at how information is being retrieved from the one for Bitcoin transaction and how information has been organized from Ethereum transaction is a little bit totally different. But once you understand the type of information which you're looking for in a particular public blockchain, then that is fine. For example, with this Ethereum, the structure is a little bit different. But of course, as I mentioned before, we have the transaction hash, we have got the status, which indicate that this particular transaction was a success. We have the block ID, we have the timestamp, the time when that particular transaction happened. We have got the from. Remember, guys, when I mentioned the from, which transaction was basically being conducted by who and it went to who. So these are some of the information or data which somebody can be able to gather from a public blockchain. All right. And as I mentioned to you guys, when it comes to blockchain transaction, there is what is called wallet addresses. All right. Transactions within the blockchain ecosystem happen with wallets interacting. All right. So these wallet addresses, you need to understand how then, with these wallet addresses, how then are we able to tell who is exactly behind a particular wallet address? And of course, even as we proceed with our presentation, we'll be able to tell that. And the main reason why I'm basically showing you this bit is because the reason why we have got some criminal elements or illicit actors taking advantage in using cryptocurrency is the ease on how you can be able to generate a wallet address and be able to proceed with conducting transactions. I don't know how long it takes for an individual to open a bank account. Now that I understand we have got Kenya Bankers Association joining us, and I believe maybe probably majority work within the banking system. When a client steps in within the bank, how long does it take for this particular client to get his bank account sorted? Of course, I know maybe probably banks have been trying as much as they can to make sure that the operations are efficient, but we are going to see just through practicals how it can take you less than 30 seconds to generate a wallet address, enter into blockchain, start doing transaction. And I think with this, I'll shift to practicality, a bit of it. Allow me just to shift my screen, new share. There we go. If you guys are going to be able to see my screen, then please let me know by typing a yes. If you can be able to see my screen, are you guys able to see my screen? Can let me know by typing a yes. All right. Okay, good. So with this, I'm just going to show you how it's very easy to generate a crypto wallet address. within a flip of a finger, you have an address. So for example, in this particular site, you can see my address is currently being generated within 30 seconds. Then within 30 seconds, there we go. My address, I'm just basically generating my address. There we go, and there we go. All right. So you can be able to see I've generated my address. All right. It took less than 30 seconds. I don't know whether it's 10 seconds. And already I've created my account. So I have got the address, which I'm able to share with people, especially if I want to receive money. And then I have got what is called the private key, or what I'm keeping secret. Just like a bank account, all right? With the bank account, you've got the account number, which anytime I'm asking you, okay, could you please share with me your account number so that I can be able to share with you some money, you'll be able to share it with me. And then you've got your secret PIN. Once you've received money from me, then you'll be able to use your secret PIN to access that money. With blockchain or crypto transactions also happens the same. We normally have two types of addresses. We have the public address, where you share to those people probably whom you want to conduct transactions with. This one is for the public. And then we have the secret or the private key, which you use in order for you to access the crypto which has been sent to you. I believe I'm clear up to that particular point. So allow me just to shift back to our PowerPoint, but that was clearly to show you guys how easy it is within less than 10 seconds for you to generate a wallet address. And that clearly tells you the reason why most illicit actors or criminals, they tend to use crypto transactions because of ease on how to be able to create accounts. So with the Bitcoin wallet addresses, for example, we have got different types of addresses. That is something that you need to understand, and more so, especially for maybe for the law enforcement people who are joining us as well. So we have got the legacy types of addresses. We have the segregated, taproot, native segment. I, of course, I'd mentioned some of the courses which you normally do in-house, where we normally get to understand into details how these type of addresses work, and the reason why people will be able or will be interested to use this type of address as opposed to this type of address. Of course, that's a more detailed and deep discussions, but I was just letting you guys know that you also need to understand that we have got different types of addresses, and the reason why criminals probably will prefer to use this type of address as opposed to this type of an address, right? So then what are some of the ways on how crypto is usually introduced into the marketplace? Because I know that is the one question which probably some of our viewers will be asking themselves. Then how is cryptocurrency being introduced to the market? You've told us how the addresses work. You've told us how the transactions are working. Then how do we then introduce them into the marketplace? So mining is one of the methods, right? And mining is one of the most toughest jobs ever. The other day when we were discussing with a group of people, and I was telling them with cryptocurrency, there are those ones which are supposed to be mined. And for them, they were like, okay, good. So do you mean we have to look for a ground somewhere, dig it deep, and then be able to access Bitcoin? Remember, the cryptocurrencies, they are virtual, right? They are not physical currencies which you cannot be able to probably hold into your hand. These are virtuals, and we were talking about mining. Mining basically involves using computers to solve complex mathematical puzzles, all right? The computers are basically racing to solve complex mathematical puzzles. The computer which wins to solve that particular puzzle, then we say, in that particular case, we say we have got a crypto which has been mined. So mining is one of the concepts, how new cryptocurrencies are basically introduced into the market. Then we have got what is called an ICO, initial coin offering. All right. Then you have got what is called airdrops. Maybe those people who normally follow blockchain news more closely, we keep on seeing people talk about airdrops left, right, and center, of which whenever we are doing deep learning, then we get to explain to you guys what are ICOs and what are airdrops, and probably also with the scams related to such kind of introduction to the marketplace. So with crypto assets, I know for some people they are like, okay, good. Is this thing are people really using crypto? All right, and especially whenever we are having this discussion with guys from the banking sector, all right, they are like, so this is it famous? Are people really using cryptocurrency? Ladies and gentlemen, for your information, right now, right? Based on some companies which are trying to publish their statistics and research, it clearly indicates, the latest report clearly indicates that over 562 million people globally are currently using cryptocurrency, all right? That clearly tells you that it's only a few millions, right? We have already crossed the 500 million mark, all right? So it basically means maybe probably in 2025, 2026, we will be talking about billions of people who are currently consuming cryptocurrency. So if you are somebody who probably is working in the banking sector and you're wondering whether people are basically using cryptocurrency, then you better watch out. Maybe your clients are the major consumers and you might not be able to tell, right? So basically, this clearly shows the distribution index, how crypto ownership is with advanced economies, countries with an advanced economies, countries within the emerging economies, and the worldwide average. So you can be able to see the United Arab Emirates, people who have been leading, especially when it comes to having cutting-edge solutions as far as blockchain is concerned. You can be able to see the likes of Nigeria, you can be able to see the likes of some other African countries in between there. Basically tells you crypto is not something which is being consumed by people who are based in Europe or the United States or Middle East. It's also something which is being consumed by people within Africa as well, all right? So according to CoinMarketCap, the amount of cryptocurrency which is currently in circulation, of course, we have got over 2.4 million plus, right? Different types of cryptocurrency which are in circulation in the marketplace. So that is something that you guys need to understand as well. So then what basically makes this cryptocurrency something people are basically like using them a lot? It's because of faster settlement, right? And a case in place, I keep on telling people, there was a day I was basically receiving, I was waiting for payment. There's a friend of mine who sent me some money based in the United States, and he was wiring some money to me, right? It took almost roughly, was it roughly a week before I could be able to access that money, all right? But when it comes to crypto settlement, right, it's within a blink of an eye. Someone who is based maybe in South Africa, someone who is based in Europe, sends you a crypto transaction within a blink of an eye, you have got your money with you, all right? So it has got what is called the faster settlement, and it's more secure. It is decentralized, as we have mentioned. There is census, distributed, unanimous, and then immutability, which is very much important, because the immutability basically means the information which is being stored within the blockchain ecosystem, it is hard to change, all right? With those information is being stored within the blockchain ecosystem, it is hard to change. And of course, as time goes by, I'll be showing you how public blockchain is and how transactions are happening within the public blockchain ecosystem. And I know some people will be like, oh, then it means it's easy for somebody to manipulate and change these transactions. And just to tell you that blockchain transactions are immutable. And we have been seeing some of the major global headlines, all right? And these are some of the things which are making crypto to start gaining momentum in terms of use, right? So the other day we saw Louisiana accept fast crypto payment for their state services. We also saw one of the presidential aspirants from the United States. Of course, with the United States, in November, they'll be conducting elections. And we saw one of the presidential aspirants was basically using cryptocurrency to make payments in the restaurants, have some purchases. And also, we have been seeing from the global headlines, Russia approves law allowing use of crypto for global payments as it faces ongoing transactions. So it basically tells you how countries have already started moving towards cryptocurrency and accepting them as a mode or as a means of payment, all right? So the other day, we also saw Nigeria, the Security Exchange Commission, issuing their first interim licenses to local crypto exchanges, all right? Of course, which also hit the global headline. So it's just a few probably months down the line, maybe a few months down the line, then you also start seeing major global headlines popping from where we are, or Kenya in general, all right? So, of course, as I've mentioned, what basically makes cryptocurrency so special is the little to no transaction cost. Right now, I know for sure, now that we have got guys from the banking sector as well joining us, all right? If I want to transfer, let's say, 50,000 Kenya shillings to somebody who is based in South Africa, for example, right? By the time I'll be sending my 50,000 Kenya shillings, when I look at the transaction cost, of course, it will be I'm likely to experience high transaction cost, right? But with cryptocurrency, there is something that you need to understand. We normally have, depending with the blockchain which you guys are using when it comes to doing transactions, we have got those chains which allows up to no transaction cost. You can even wire $1,000 without any transaction cost. All right, so you can imagine, and it is 24/7 to be able to access your money, no limits on purchases and withdrawals, and of course, freedom for use for anyone, and international transactions are faster. All right, so those are some of the things which are basically making cryptocurrency to be more globally accepted, and as the global acceptance continues, all right, we also have some criminal elements who are also trying as much as they can to make sure that they are using cryptocurrency in what is not intended. All right, I know for some people they normally say cryptocurrency is money for criminals. That is usually like more or less like the general say when anytime you're interacting with some people, maybe probably those who don't understand, and you are like, okay, have you ever transacted with cryptocurrency? Then you hear them say, oh, you mean that money being used by a criminal? Every money is used by a criminal. And also for the fiat, for example, Kenyan shillings, for example, of course, we've been seeing cases of fraud, cases of theft, cases of different cases involving Kenya shillings, where criminals are basically using the fiat currency, all right, or the physical cash to commit acts of crime. Does it mean that the fiat then is money which belongs to criminal? Absolutely no. That was not the intended use for fiat currency. And it's the same thing, right? When cryptocurrency came into play, the intended use was not for it to be used for criminal activities. Now that with criminals, as crazy as they are, trying to explore things, finding how can they be able to integrate or incorporate it when it comes to conducting illicit activity. That's why with some people, they normally feel crypto is basically being used for criminals. This is just a report which shows some of the kind of crimes which are having a nexus with cryptocurrency. And of course, ransomware, of course, which is one of the kind of crime which we'll be discussing as time goes by, also falls into this particular place. That is a report which was shared by the FBI. And maybe just to let you know some of the common frauds and scams which are usually related with cryptocurrency. Of course, we have been seeing ICOs, which are mentioned, fraudulent exchanges, cloud mining, and phishing, which are not going to dig deep into them today, of course. And we have the blackmail scam, business, government, or job scams. All those are type of scams which they are in some way having associations with cryptocurrency, or you are likely to find them being associated with cryptocurrency as well. And of course, we have the darknet market, right? With the darknet market, I'd share this story for those people probably who attended this training last time. And I mentioned with the darknet market is one of the areas where most of the illicit activities usually happen. And with people who operate dark web marketplaces, they find cryptocurrencies with the use cases for cryptocurrencies which we talked about. They normally use cryptocurrency a lot, all right? And a case in place is one of the dark web marketplaces which collected so much money to an extent they had to publish into their website that they were basically officially retiring, because a lot of transactions that happened within that ecosystem, they received so much commission, and then they decided to shut down the marketplace because everybody now became wealthy and they decided to part ways. All right. Now, the most type of cryptocurrencies which are usually widely used or most commonly used for cybercrime or illegal activities, of course, we have got Bitcoin, we have got Ethereum, and then we have got Monero. Simply because with Bitcoin and Ethereum, they've got a larger community, or they support a wider community, and they're commonly used when it comes to transactions, and of course with Monero for some criminal activities who normally try as much as they can to hide, right? Of course, it's usually said that with Monero, anytime there are transactions which happen within the Monero, it's hard to trace, but with the kind of emerging technologies which we have, blockchain forensics analytics tools which are currently which is being introduced into the marketplace, chances are, slight chances are that it could be, right? It could be. It's showing some possibilities on how to be able to trace some illicit activities that happen within Monero. I know for maybe criminal, this could be criminals or illicit guys. This could be like bad news hearing from me, but I'm just telling you, just letting you guys know that we have new technologies which are basically being introduced within the market, which is which have got the ability to trace some of the privacy coins which we have in the market, right? So, so before we touch on the nexus between crypto and ransomware, allow me just to touch on a case which we are currently working on. And the main reason why I decided to have this case is because it's a case which came to our attention last week, and it touched on ransom. So I said during my presentation, I'll try as much as I can to just incorporate it. And I've tried to mask some of the sensitive areas on it, given that it's something which is currently ongoing in-house. So I wouldn't want to let some Pandora out of the box. But this is how the case is, right? When we received this complaint. So on September 13th, 2024, a family experienced a tragic loss when their mother was murdered at their home while alone. The perpetrators buried her body on the property and stole her phone. They then used the victim's phone to send ransom demands to the family via messaging apps, claiming she had been kidnapped. The family, unaware of her fate, complied with the demands and transferred cryptocurrency worth approximately X amount of USDT amount to the provided address, and that happened on 15th of September 2025, right? After the transfer, the criminal seized all communications and deleted the messaging account. So the family's search ended in heartbreak when they discovered their mother's body was buried on their property, and this happened on 19th, last week, 2024. Then, when we received this case, with preliminary investigations, it revealed that the ransom money, right, which had been partially transferred to a peer-to-peer trading platform, while the remaining amount was moved to a new cryptocurrency address, right? Then on September 22nd, and this was on Sunday, I believe, when we were checking it again, additional transfers had been made from this particular new address to the same trading platform. And now the family is now seeking assistance in form of freezing the remaining funds and bringing the perpetrators to justice. Ransom is knocking home. So for those people who probably are saying ransomware is away from us, then you can start seeing how criminals are now inventing ways on how they can be able to initiate or ask for ransom using cryptocurrency. This is a fresh case which landed on our desk, and we are currently handling out to see how best to be of help to the said victims. All right, so ransomware and crypto assets. And ransomware, for those people who probably are attending this particular webinar, and allow me just to define ransomware in a more simple, basic format, right? I remember I told you guys that I don't want to enter into too much technicality when it comes to explanation, so I'll try as much as I can to make it a little bit basic. But with ransomware, basically it means it's just a computer software program once installed, right? Once installed in your communication gadget, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your phone, then it denies you access. You will not be able to access. Depending on the type of ransom, it can deny you access. You cannot be able to access your photos. Depending on the type of ransom, it deny you access to your banking apps. Depending on the type of ransom, it can deny you to access your M-Pesa. It can deny you to access your WhatsApp. So ransomware basically dates back to 1989. For those people who have read about the AIDS Trojan by a gentleman called Joseph Pope, when he attended one of the events and he decided to distribute some of the floppy disks which had got, which were infected, which had got ransomware installed on them. So what happened for those people who took these particular floppy disks, when they went and inserted these floppy drives in their machines or in their desktop, a pop-up message was displayed. And this is the nature, or this is the characteristic on how ransomware usually operate. So anytime your computer gets infected, a pop-up message usually gets sent. So the pop-up message, what normally happens, the pop-up message usually displays the direction, or it gives you guidance on what you're supposed to do in order for you to be able to receive your files or the encrypted data back. So it will give you the amount of money that you're supposed to pay, it will give you the address where that particular money is supposed to be channeled, and all those guidance in order for you to follow. All right. So after 1989, with the emergence of technology, as time goes by, we have been seeing emergence of so many ransomware groups. Right. And right now with cryptocurrency, back then, 2008, 2009, we have been seeing ever since increased, right, formation of ransomware groups. I know for some people, they will be like, how comes we have law enforcement guys in place? How comes we have legal experts in place? How comes we have security professionals in place? Then ransomware groups keep on mutating, or they keep on increasing in number, right? And the reason being, of course, we are going to discuss some of the reasons, right? And basing on what FBI shared sometimes back, right? Some of the reasons. We have got what is called the scattered spider group, all right? And with the scattered spider group is a unique challenge for cybercrime. The reason being, with ransomware groups, once they have noticed that they're under watch or under the radar, they usually split into different smaller groups, all right? Once they split into different smaller groups, they continue with the attacks. Then again, they re-emerge later to form another bigger group. So ladies and gentlemen, dealing with such kind of groups can be a little bit tricky, right? Because anytime you think that you want to nail them down, they have the ability to split into different smaller groups. And then with different smaller groups, they conduct several small attacks. And then with that, there is strategies to form again another bigger group with another big name, all right? So just hold on for a second. All right, so with scattered spider group, for example, the type of ransomware which they normally use mostly when conducting the attacks, of course, we've got the ransom hub and the quilling ransom attacks. So basically, this clearly shows the statistics on how the status of the ransomware currently is, and some of the properties of cryptocurrency, which basically makes it more appealing to these particular groups. And as I mentioned, is that with cryptocurrency, it has got what is called the censorship resistance. There is no any person, all right, whether it's a government, whether it's a central authority, which can be able to censor the kind of transactions which are happening within the crypto ecosystem, given that most transactions are decentralized, all right? Then it is digital, all right? It's virtual. Then we have got what is called the pseudonymity aspect, all right? At least it partially, right? It partially, you cannot be able to tell with naked eyes whether it's this particular person who probably decided to initiate this transaction, all right? But now, the advantage which we have as security expert from our end is that with every technology, of course, there will always be what is called the vulnerable points, all right? With this particular case, when it comes to blockchain transactions, there is what is called the transparency element, where we can be able, once we have plotted whatever we are plotting into our blockchain forensics tools, then we can be able to see the transactions which basically happen within the blockchain ecosystem. So with ransomware groups, some of the reasons which basically makes them to be more or increasing in number, we have got what's called the big game hunting. And with the big game hunting, basically means these ones, their role is to target big corporations. All right, their work is to target big corporations, the banks, utility, hospitals, because the reason why they are targeting big corporations is because once they identify and profile a target, high chances of this particular corporation paying a ransom is high, right? Then you have got what is called the ransomware as a service. And with ransomware as a service, it means they're operating it as an entity where we've got the people who are leading business development people, we have got the developers, we have got the affiliates, people who are working to check out who are the potential customers where they will be able to infect their systems, all right? So with the ransomware developers, their work is to create, they are engineers, and for them, they maintain the payment structure. And then with the affiliate, their work is to identify the target, they research, and they conduct negotiations, all right? And with the affiliate programs, this basically tells you how tells you how the affiliate program it's usually run. And when it comes to affiliate programs, they normally agree with the main guys on the percentage commission. I know right now, probably in our companies, we normally have those contracts. We agree with the people whom you're working with. If you achieve to hit this X amount of sales, then we will be able to split X amount of money amongst us, or a particular percentage. It is the same thing that happens with this particular ransomware group. So with the affiliates, once they agree in the percentage, then they'll be able now to continue doing their business. Then we have got what is called the double extortion. With the double extortion, it basically means for those clients who basically refuse to cooperate, right? Once a ransomware has been requested and your company or your organization or you as an individual, you refuse to cooperate, then you will be dumped into a particular site. With this site, people will be able to access most of your company data, most of your details. And ladies and gentlemen, especially for those people who are attending this particular forum, with this day and age, data is actually one of the most valuable assets, which most companies are basically working so hard to protect. So if you find somebody who wants to display your data into public, then it becomes a challenging problem to most organizations. They don't want their company information being dumped into a particular site where people can be able to see how you are operating, right? So we are just going to briefly go through just a real case involving the rival ransomware from infection, negotiation, and payment. And then from there also we'll be able to see the role of blockchain blockchain analytics tools when it comes to tracking ransomware payments. So with this particular case, victim files get infected by a rival malware, and rival basically means it's a ransomware evil. That's its name, all right? So as I mentioned to you guys before, anytime an infection has happened, there is a pop-up message which is usually displayed. And with the pop-up message, basically gives you direction or gives you guidance on what you're supposed to do next, right? And what normally happens with these ransomware groups, they will, of course, give you an access website where you can be able to engage with them. They'll give you the links on how you can be able now to strike a negotiation or a conversation with them. So anytime a victim accesses this portal, of course, it will be able to display to you that your network has been infected, and it gives you direction, right? It gives you direction from the screen, and it clearly tells you the more you delay, then these are the repercussions. And it clearly tells you if you don't comply, then it means also the amount of ransomware is likely to increase as it has been shown in our screen, right? So also with the portal, it gives you an opportunity to be able to view the amount of ransom that you're supposed to pay. In this particular case, there is X amount of Monero which needs to be paid by this particular victim, and anytime he delays in remitting this particular ransom, the amount gets doubled, all right? So That being said and done, so let's say, for example, you are not satisfied with the information which you have been given. Then it means the ransomware group gives you an opportunity where you can be able to interact with them in the customer care, customer support, right? The same way with our institutions, we have got places where we can be able to interact with our clients or customers. With ransomware groups, they also give you that opportunity where you can be able to initiate a discussion and probably be able to conduct a negotiation. So in this particular case, with this particular victim, he was asked to pay 50K. This particular victim feels paying 50K is slightly on the higher side, and he is basically communicating, requesting for a discount. And then we can be able to see how that negotiation is basically flowing in. And when victim is requesting for the discount, victim is also requesting to know whether with the files which have been encrypted, is there a possibility to be able to decrypt this file? And then with guys from that other side, or the ransomware attackers, they just want to assure the victim that once you pay our ransom, then high chances of you receiving your files. You also have chances of receiving back your files, right? And with that, the victim requests, are you able to send for me probably these files once they've been decrypted? And that is the conversation which you are currently seeing. The guys from the other side, the ransomware guys, decrypt some of the files, or he makes that information easily accessible where the victim can be able to view some of these files. So what happens now? The victim says paying in Monero is a little bit challenging, and asks whether they can be able to accept Bitcoin. And of course, with the ransomware groups, they have got different payment methods. If you think that you cannot be able to access Monero, they will enable the one which you are comfortable with. For example, if you're comfortable with paying with Bitcoin, they'll enable that for you. If you're comfortable paying with Ethereum, they'll enable that for you. If you're comfortable paying with a particular cryptocurrency, they'll also enable that for you. And you can be able to see how these people have structured their systems to how normal institutions operate with their clients, right? So given that with tracing Bitcoin carries a little bit of risk, the ransomware guys, of course, indicate another percentage on top of the amount of money which is supposed to be paid, is because when a client has paid with Bitcoin, high chances of them getting tracked and traced as high, and that's why is basically indicating a surcharge on that. Of course, we are seeing the negotiation continuing, and the victim is requesting whether they can be able to pay $20,000, but the ransomware guys are holding up the negotiation and telling them they can only be paid 25K. And then once everything has been agreed, right? Once everything has been agreed, the victim is now able to send ransom with the cryptocurrency format which they had already negotiated, all right? And once that has been done, your files are being decrypted back and you can be able to download. Now, one thing that you need to understand as well is that when it comes to decryption of file, all right, I know for some people they normally ask, is it a guarantee that you will be able to receive back your files when it comes to ransomware attacks? And the answer is, it's never a guarantee, all right? It's 100%, it's never guaranteed. Chances are you might end up paying that particular ransom, and chances are also you might end up not receiving your files or data in return. And of course, once that particular payment has been received, then the money just gets laundered within the blockchain ecosystem, with some of the money going to the darknet market, some of the money going to the exchanges, and whatnot. All right. So in 2024, for those people who have been following up keenly when it comes to ransomware payments, this year, so far, we have got one of the ransomware groups called the Dark Angels, who requested, all right, who did some ransomware attack in one of the institutions, and they requested $75 million US. So far, it's one of the most, the maximum ransomware payment which has been done so far in the year 2024. You can be able to see in 2023, the amount which was paid, which was the highest, was $37.8 million. But in 2024, already we are talking about over 70 million. It clearly tells you that this group, they're very serious in whatever they do, and they're really making a lot of money. And through that, it attracts other criminal elements when it comes to conducting such kind of illicit activity. So with that being said and done, then how then do we combat and investigate such kind of ransomware attack? All right, how then do we investigate? So anytime we are doing a crypto investigation, and more so here at A&D Forensics, there are some of the objectives which we need to set in place for every crypto investigation that you are conducting. Because with every investigation, there must be an ultimate goal, all right? And for our case, we want to establish the sender of the funds. We want to establish the receiver of the funds. When the reason why we are doing the investigation, we want to establish the services interacted with during these transactions. We want to see whether there were mixers involved, whether there was chain hopping involved. We want to see whether there is any illicit activity which happened when these transactions were interacting, were being conducted within the blockchain ecosystem, whether this money was being transferred to the darknet marketplaces. We also want to see whether these transactions, do they have any other touch points? Touch points basically means, are they interacting with other addresses within the blockchain ecosystem? So those are some of the objectives, some of the things which you normally look at whenever we have received a case. And then we want to establish the cash out locations. All right. So with the cash out locations, that's now when we collaborate closely with the law enforcement, of course, to issue what is called a subpoena when it comes to crypto exchanges, because now from the cash out locations with the crypto exchanges, that is when now we can be able to tell the true identity of a particular person behind a particular address. So with this objective, they basically boil down to two key areas. And of course, identifying where the stolen funds are located and identifying the threat actor behind the incident. All right. So when we are conducting investigation, when it comes to ransomware and their cryptocurrency involved, these are some of the things which we are trying to establish whenever we are trying to find out the culprits behind the transactions. So what normally happens with our blockchain forensics analytics, it helps us when it comes to monitoring ransomware payments. It also helps us to follow the money, right? So we are able to establish whether the touch points for this money, did it interact with some other addresses? Was this money interacting with mixers? Was this money withdrawn in a particular exchange? With blockchain forensics tools, they can be able to show us that kind of interaction. And also, it can also be able to tell us whether is it money laundering which is ongoing in this particular transaction, depending with how that particular money is being how it's flowing within the blockchain ecosystem. We are also in a position to tell whether there is a kind of probably money laundering activities which is basically happening with such kind of transactions. So this is just an image which tells you, I took it from a tracing which we were basically doing sometimes, and it tells you with the blockchain forensic tools can be able to tell you where that particular transaction came from. For example, with this particular case, there is a transaction which was coming from a ransomware group, and this particular ransomware group, they're called menace locker, and there is X amount of BTC which they are transferred to a known address, and from this particular address, we have got some amount of BTC which were wired to a particular entity, and the cryptocurrency which was coming from this particular entity were wired finally to a particular cryptocurrency exchange. So with the blockchain analytics tools, clearly tells you the touch points for this particular ransom which was paid, and now we are able to work in liaison with the law enforcement who are able to subpoena these crypto exchanges and get more detail about the true identity of that particular person behind their addresses. All right. So this is also another one with a different blockchain forensic tool altogether. And apparently for our case, we normally use a variety of different crypto tracing tools in-house. So this also shows a snapshot which I just took from one of our crypto tracing tool, and it clearly tells you how with blockchain forensic tools it maps out how transactions are happening within the blockchain ecosystem, and you can be able to follow the flow of funds up to where this particular money is landing to. Right? So this is also another case scenario I took this from the blockchain forensics tools, some of the cases which you're currently to have in place. And with this also leads us now to the publicly available tools for tracing. I know maybe probably for those people who are here, you might be asking yourself, does it mean that when it comes to tracing, we are only supposed to use private proprietary tools, right? Of course, we have got different tools which you can be able to use. We have got those tools which are publicly available, you can be able to utilize. And then we have the private proprietary tools which you need to pay or subscribe in order for you to access. With the public tools, if you're practicing the art of investigation or trying to follow the flow of funds or a ransomware, you can either use the blockchain.com or the Etherscan or Tron. And allow me just for 1 minute to take you guys through the practicals on how this basically works. And you will be able to see the kind of information one is able to obtain either from a blockchain.com, Etherscan, or a Tronscan. So with that, I will just quickly shift my sharing of the screen to sorry, there we go. Then we are back here. I believe you guys, you can be able to hear me loud and clear. If you can be able to hear me loud and clear, please let me know by typing in the chat with a yes. If you can be able to hear me loud and clear, please type in the chat with a yes. We are almost finishing. If you can be able to hear me loud and clear, please type in the chat with a yes. All right. Now, suppose we have a ransomware which was requested through Bitcoin, all right, or BTC address, all right? If you are a crypto investigator or a blockchain forensic specialist, you need to understand the address which was reported. And from our end, we are able to tell this particular address belongs to BTC. This particular address maybe probably belongs to Ethereum. It probably belongs to Tron, because you need to understand whenever you want to use a public blockchain, all right? So in this particular case, I have retrieved an address which is I've retrieved an address which it's a BTC one. So I'll be able to log into my blockchain explorer. You guys, you can be able to see my new screen which I've shared, right? Blockchain explorer. Then once I've pasted that particular address, there we go. It has accepted, and it is telling me now there are one blockchain with the results of your research. All right. And if I click that address, it pops up the information which I'm looking for. Let's say, for example, I'm following up a ransomware payment, and I've identified the type of address which they used belongs to Bitcoin. Then I'll be able to use the blockchain explorer just to establish, and I can be able to tell with the explorer the time when this particular transaction happened and how the transactions are basically happening. From my screen, you can be able to see transactions are basically moving from this to this, and it clearly tells from which address. And when I click the drop down, it basically tells it moved from this particular address. It also indicates the amount of cryptocurrency involved, and this is the address where that particular cryptocurrency was wired into. Of course, in our learning, there is what is usually called the UTXO, the unspent transaction output. That sounds a little bit complex, but whenever we are conducting our trainings, we normally dive much deeper so that you get to understand what does it mean with a UTXO, right? But for this particular demonstration, I'm only showing you how you can be able to pick a ransomware wallet address. If there is a ransomware which has happened, and there is crypto element in that particular case, and this payment happened in form of BTC, you can be able to pick that particular address and use a public blockchain and maybe plot it and be able to identify how the transactions have basically been flowing with that particular address. And this can only happen if you understand what you're looking for and where exactly you're supposed to be looking at. For example, let's say I'm using Etherscan, all right? And have I noticed that the kind of transaction which basically happened, it's for the address involved is for Ethereum. Then I'll be able to launch that investigation, do my preliminary investigation on the Etherscan. And you can be able to see how the interfaces looks a little bit more different. I'll be able to type my cryptocurrency address. click. Once I click, it pops out. And it pops out, it tells me that warning, there are reports that this address was used in phishing scam. Please exercise caution when interacting with this particular address. All right. So those are the kind of information which you can also be able to obtain from these public blockchains. And as I continue to scroll down, you can be able to see the amount of transactions which have happened and the number of days when these particular transactions happened. So if I'm a crypto or a blockchain forensic investigator, I'll now have to filter depending with when the case was basically reported to me, and I'll be able to go to those dates and be able to retrieve the kind of transactions which basically happened. Once I've retrieved those kind of information, if there is more information or more insight I want to understand with a particular transaction, then I'll be able to plot. I'll now be able to shift or use the private proprietary blockchain forensics tool just to get more insight on how a particular transaction happened. For example, if I was using the Tron one, if I've identified the ransomware was paid with a Tron wallet address, then I'll just be able to open a Tron scan. So with a Tron scan, I'll be able now to paste that particular address. I'll just come here, paste the address. Once I've pasted the address, do my search. And voila, all right? It basically gives me the type of transactions which have been happening within this particular address, all right? So ideally, that basically tells you with public blockchains, you can be able to know and follow and be able to see the kind of transactions which are happening within the blockchain ecosystem. And that boils down to the transparency element, which we touched on when we were talking about blockchain transactions or crypto transactions. All right. So as I conclude, now when you look at cybersecurity threat landscape, for example, in Africa and other regions, of course, with Kaspersky released data in 2023, and they were basically showing the cybersecurity threat in African landscape and Middle East together with Turkey. And you can be able to see Kenya having a threat of 39.2%. And also another report basically stated that with Africa, we still gold mine when it comes to cyber threats, all right? Africa, we are still like a gold mine when it comes to hackers. It means basically with the type of systems which you're basically using within Africa, it still needs a lot of improvement on that. And that's why we are having some increased cases when it comes to cyber attacks and when it comes to ransomware. So ransomware attacks in Kenya, of course, also we had got Kenya hitting a record of 860 million types of cyber attacks. And of course, with that being said and done, most of the sectors which have been affected so far, highly affected. We have the energy, the water sector, where such kind of attacks usually happen most of the time. And of course, we have been seeing anytime we have got our president making some visits. The other day, we saw our president visited the United States of America. And one of the key things which were tabled in form of discussions was basically being able to protect the cyberspace, and with the United States coming in handy to help the Kenyan government when it comes to protecting its cyberspace, all right? So it basically tells you that when it comes to matters with ransomware attacks, cybersecurity, this is just like a thorn in the flesh for most countries. And of course, with such kind of developments, we have been seeing reports from the Communications Authority of Kenya also highlighting some significant steps which they have already taken. And there are some slight drop when it comes to attacks which are happening, all right? So with that being said and done, of course, as I conclude, with whatever we have mentioned, it means that as ownership of virtual assets grows, also new forms and tactics of crime also are continuing to rise. And also ransomware and other virtual assets and illicit activities are here to stay. And ransomware attacks can lead to reputational damage. And blockchain analytics, as you have seen, sheds light on ransomware, and it increased efforts on how to conduct crypto transactions. And of course, law enforcement can be able now to follow the money, and exchanges can screen deposits for ransomware proceeds, and non-compliant exchanges are the weak links. And still, we have debates around ransomware on whether we are supposed to pay or not to pay. That is still the global debate where people are still talking about, do we need to pay ransomware, or is it illegal to pay? So those are some of the debates which we currently have globally, still ongoing. So I think with that being said and done, I believe you have been able to grasp something, and probably now just welcome a session for Q&A. In case there are some questions which maybe probably members have shared in the group chat, I'll be able to handle them. With that being said and done, thank you so much once again for giving me an opportunity to have this interaction with you.
Thank you, sir, so much. As I welcome questions from all the participants, I think I have one question from my end. I've jotted a couple of others, but allow me to just first start with this one. I'm quite curious. I think the other day we were talking about Equity Bank, and there was this heist, I think, of about 1 billion Kenya shillings. And part of the money was diverted into cryptocurrencies. And when I listen to you, I hear a lot of follow the money, follow the money. The blockchain analytic tools allows you to follow the money. So in a normal, in law, we call them moots, like we're having practicals. So I'm just wondering, from a cybersecurity perspective, are there sort of preventative measures or these practicals that you do, especially from a blockchain perspective, that can help curb some of these issues as opposed to just following the money? Are there certain elements within the bigger, wider cybersecurity, I think, ecosystem that can be utilized just to try and avoid some of these things?
All right. Thank you so much for the question. I do believe, I don't know how many cybersecurity professionals probably whom we have in-house. I know probably before I touch on it, I'll welcome maybe a cybersecurity expert who is joining us, maybe to touch on some of the key things which clients or institutions need to be working on when it comes to, in order to avoid cases like ransomware attacks, because that is heavily more on cybersecurity. I know somebody like me who is a blockchain forensic specialist, we now come in, let's say a ransomware attack has happened, and from the preliminary investigations indicates there is crypto element which was involved. All right. So with a cybersecurity specialist, will be like, okay, good. I have some addresses which I can be able to retrieve from our preliminary investigations. So reaches out to somebody like me and tells me, okay, good. I came across these crypto wallet addresses. Could you please now be able to conduct a forensic analysis on these addresses and be able to tell me what happened? All right. So a specialist like me in blockchain forensics, now I can be able, using the blockchain forensics tools, I can now be able to tell this particular person, this is actually what happened based on the analysis which we have. This is the X amount of cryptocurrency which was wired within these particular addresses, and this is how your money has been interacting within the blockchain ecosystem, and this money was withdrawn or probably ended up falling in this particular exchange, right? So this is what I can be able to do from a blockchain forensic specialist perspective. Now, with cybersecurity expert, I know with them, and that's why the education element is very much important. Now, as I answer your question in terms of some of the mitigation measures, and that's why we normally have cases whereby regular updating of the softwares, because most of these attacks or ransomware attackers, they normally try as much as they can to study weak links within a particular system. So if we don't have that regular update when it comes to softwares which you're using within our institutions, that can actually become like a weak link. And then we have got those instances where you can be able to receive abrupt links which are just being shared with you, let's say, for example, in your WhatsApp or in your email. And that's why it's usually recommended, if you don't know the source of that particular link which has been shared with you in your email address, then there is no need or no reason for you clicking to open that link, because it could be a phishing link or a scamming link. So once you have clicked that particular link, then it gives these particular ransomware attackers access to your systems, and then from there now they'll be able to do the attacks, and now it might eventually lead them to asking for ransomware, and it depends now with how they want this ransomware to be paid. For some, they want it to be paid using the regular way, using the KES or the Kenya shillings, for example. But to some, as we have seen, they would want the ransomware to be paid using cryptocurrency. All right. I believe probably I'm able to answer. I was able to answer your question.
Yes, you have. Thank you so much. So Amir, I can see your hand is up. Perhaps you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Vicky, for the excellent session. Much appreciated. But apart from the cybersecurity, what you said, and I think so, one of the CPK governors has said that dealing with bitcoins and all these currencies is not, I would say, legal to deal in Kenya. And normally the banks don't allow bitcoins to happen. So even if you give money through a bank, they won't accept it. And if you get the money from Bitcoin in Kenya, depending on the amounts, the AML or Anti-Money Laundering Act or POCMAL comes into picture. Maybe you can throw some light on that thing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And given that already, I know that we have got conversations in place when it comes to putting regulations in place on how the digital assets or the virtual assets are supposed to be regulated. And I know, especially with the legal experts whom we have in the house, probably are in a good position to touch on the regulatory aspect of virtual asset. But maybe to answer your question, when you mentioned about CBK terming cryptocurrency being illegal, you see, in-house, we have got some of the cases which we are currently handling, and some of them are touching banks, right? And interestingly, is that when you look at these cases, maybe let's say money left the bank, and this money landed into the crypto ecosystem. All right, without mentioning a bank name in particular, we have had a case whereby money left the bank, and given that with the banking staff or the banking people who are working within parallel bank, they understand how crypto transaction works. So what happened? They converted this money into cryptocurrency. So when it comes to investigation, bank does the investigation, and then they realize this money lands into the crypto ecosystem. But given that they have not done a lot of training to their staff, how they can be able to handle such kind of cases, then it becomes like a tough hurdle, right? And that's why whenever we are having these conversations with banks, we are telling them, guys, in as much as CBK, yes, has not yet given like a green light that you guys are supposed to be serving or dealing with cryptocurrency, but right now is the opportune time you need to be training your staff when it comes to matters related to crypto compliance, crypto investigation, because you'll be, with the criminals, they're not sleeping. They're busy inventing new ways, all right? And once you get hit by such kind of an attack and you're being asked to pay in form of cryptocurrency, you might find that the bank is going to comply. And another thing, there was a day also we were showing banks, you guys are saying that the CBK do not want you to participate in crypto. And then we went into one of the crypto platform called the P2P, all right? And whenever we were having that discussion, we opened it up and we showed them the name of the banks and how people are basically, how their clients are transacting with their bank, doing crypto transactions, something which the bank does not have knowledge about, that in as much as they're preventing a crypto transaction, but their clients are already participating in the crypto ecosystem and conducting transactions in that particular space. So bottom line is, you don't need to wait until the CBK gives that green light. This is the best opportune moment. Most banks, you can start by making sure that the employee gets to understand this knowledge and how crypto transaction works. So by the time CBK probably gives a go ahead and we have a proper regulatory framework, already you guys will be able now to know how to navigate whenever you are experiencing such kind of challenges when it comes to paying ransomware through cryptocurrency.
Just to add, the thing is, the moment the CBK finds out the bank is doing it, they penalize the bank as an Anti-Money Laundering Act. I have worked on the banking sector sphere, and behind the scene, they have penalized banking sectors for this thing. But anyway, as you said, we need to go with the flow. But there's always a saying: there's a legal route and there's a panya route. So we are saying leave the other way around.
For the panya route, just ensure that your people are well versed when it comes to such kind of transactions, so that you don't get flat-footed whenever you have cases where cryptocurrency is involved. So thank you so much for that contribution as well. And I can be able to see also Chantal mentioned about, of course, Capital Markets Authority have already accepted some blockchain companies into their sandbox. Yes, of course, those are some of the new developments which we are having currently in place. Thank you so much, Chantal, for that.
I think, Sarah, I think the thing Amir was touching on, like now, if I buy, let's say I buy crypto from probably Binance, I'm able to either use my Visa card, and then the bank will not know what exactly I'm purchasing. But then if I'm buying something that is more than 1 million Kenya shillings, then it triggers the AML compliance effect, which is 1 million Kenya shillings. But ordinarily, if I do multiple transactions, I'm buying crypto, but I'm just using my Visa card, or probably I'm using M-Pesa, nobody's going to know. So there are pioneer routes around it. But I think the moment it crosses the 1 million mark, then you have to explain where is the money coming from, going, etc., etc.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And that's why also currently there is a solution which we are developing in-house. And I think with banks, it will be helping them to know whether transactions which are happening within the bank are interacting with cryptocurrency. I think once we are basically in the final stages in developing that particular solution, and probably with banks now, they'll be able to tell whether it's small amount which is interacting with crypto. With that particular system, it will be able to flag it out, and they'll be able to tell, let's say used his card and did some transaction, this particular transactions. So with the system, it will be able to flag it off and be able to say this money was basically used to purchase crypto, or with the amount of money which you have received from a deposit in this account, this money actually originated from the crypto. So those are some of the new developments actually which we are currently working in-house, and very soon I know it's something that banks will be interested in as well. Thank you.
All right. I cannot see any other question within the chat session or anybody raising their hand. So I'll leave it at that. And in fact, we are almost 45 minutes later past this webinar. So we'll bring it to a close. Thank you so much, Sarah, for an insightful presentation. On my end, I've really learned a lot. And I do hope also the participants who are on this call have also learned. And if you do want to reach to Sarah for further conversation, I think he has shared with us his contact addresses on the screen.